Hello, it's Vidas Pinkevicius, and in this video I would like to talk about the situation when you have to perform in public on an unfamiliar organ. That could be a service, church service, or an entire recital. It really doesn't make any difference. And I observing how people play on an unfamiliar organs, especially during recitals when they have very little time to prepare, maybe a few hours, maybe 1 hour, maybe just they have to sit down and play. That happens as well. So there are a lot of tricky things to notice and to avoid maybe. So the first thing is, of course, to simplify your repertoire choices. Simplify. If you don't know this organ very well, if you haven't played anything before, my most obvious recommendation would be to simplify your repertoire. That doesn't mean that this repertoire has to be dull and simple and easy to play. No, but simplify your repertoire means that you have to think about what you will be encountering on that particular organ, and that is very easy today to know ahead of time, right? You can figure out the registration changes in advance. You can figure out the specification list of that organ in advance, and maybe the style of this organ, maybe even the position of the stops, whether you need right hand or left hand changes, or with the pedal stops, levers and pedals, pushing toe pedals. Everything has to be thought through in advance. So the best way is to really do some research. But if you simplify your repertoire, that would be very wise. So, for example, imagine a hypothetical situation. Okay, you are invited to play on a symphonic maybe 19th century Cavaillé organ, maybe, yeah, that's French symphonic organ, maybe in Paris. Okay, you are traveling in Paris and you suddenly want to play something, right? So a lot of organists, of course, would want to play some Franck, right? And Franck and Widor and Vierne and all these Duruflé, right? All these intricate pieces that these genius composers wrote for that specific instrument or that specific style of instrument. So, but my recommendation is you can choose wisely from the wider group of repertoire of pieces, right? But try be very careful not to choose the compositions that you cannot manage yourself, for example. So, for example, if you try to play some Franck on an unfamiliar piece, on an unfamiliar organ, be very careful that your registration changes can be done by you, by your hand, by your feet, okay? And you have to practice this in advance on your own organ, preparing mentally for what you may be encountering on an unfamiliar organ. And sometimes I guess it's easier and much wiser to choose a piece with less swell pedal action, less swell pedal and crescendo pedal movements. These things can be very subtle on an unfamiliar organ, and you have to have a good experience and maybe lots of practice on that particular organ in order to do this, you know, fluently and naturally. But if you have only 1 hour to prepare, and I've seen this happen before for some organists, they they cannot adjust to the swell pedal movement very well, so their crescendo levels is too wide, or diminuendos also very sudden, and then that happens a lot to some organists who don't know this instrument very well. So in order to solve the situation properly, of course, you can do two things. You can practice the swell pedal movement in advance, ahead of time, on your organ, or even mentally, while pushing by sitting on the at the table too, on your basically in your office or somewhere else. Or the second option would be to avoid playing those pieces that have a heavy action of the swell pedal, okay, heavy action of manipulating the stops by hand, okay. That could be done, of course, but you have to be very careful and to have lots and lots of experience and practice with many different instruments, okay. Of course, if you know maybe 20 or 50 unfamiliar instruments before, then of course this one new instrument will not do any damage to you. You will adjust right away. In 5 or 15 or 20 minutes you will know how to push the stops, and you can do this naturally. But if you are just a relative beginner, or if you know only few instruments deeply, and this new instrument is sort of tricky for you to adjust, then avoid these pieces that have many registration changes, okay. So good luck in your practice, and I hope you will travel and try out many different organs, because this is very good experience, and little by little you can gain more and more experience. This is just like driving a car, of course, right? If you know just 1 or 2 or 3 cars, then the 4th car is completely different, and you might be very afraid of that driving situation. But if you know 50 cars, of course, if you are a professional mechanic, right, car repairer, then of course the 60 or 100 cars is very easy to manage, right? So the same is for organs. My best advice is try out as many organs as you possibly can, and then you will have almost no tricky situation, because you can adjust in a few minutes to the new organ. Thanks.